Yo, what up? This is D Knight, and you're listening to the Pardon the Insurrection podcast. My oh my, we've had so much going on. For starters, in case you missed it, we've got a new addition to the Pardon Pie family, Tara Dublin. Make sure you go follow her on Twitter at Tara Dublin Rocks. Also, pick up a copy of her book while you're at it. Make her day, The Sound of Settling. A very fun and interesting read compared to the things we talk about on this podcast. But yeah, we're heading toward the do or die time for the 2024 election. Go ahead and hit up joebiden.com. Get that man like $1 a month or something. Help his campaign staff up and get prepared to try and save our democracy. And make sure to grab like one other person you know and tell them about the podcast. Make sure they subscribe and tune in every single week. We got a lot of things coming up for you this year. We need all the support that we can get. So if you do your part and help us grow our audience, we'll do our part and help elect Joe Biden in 2024 and save American democracy. And this is the Pardon the Insurrection podcast.
I mean, I don't think there was much news this week, so I'm not sure what we're going to talk about.
The fuck are you talking about, Ty? What are you talking about?
She's kidding, Bunny.
I know. Kids, y'all ready to do real podcast time?
Yeah, let's do it.
Do y'all have any particular points of interest you wanted to bring up specifically?
No, there's an indictment. There's so many co-conspirators. There's so many that they I got bored listing the 18. And then
oh yeah, you know what? That's a good idea.
And I was like, I know the first one, and then I'm like, I think I know who the second one is, and then I'm like, I'm really quickly losing interest in this. There's so many.
Hey, Carol, you can't lose interest in bad guys going to prison. That's the whole point of this fucking podcast. I mean, what are you doing? What are you doing?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey, this is D-Night.
This is Carol. This is Ty.
And Fonnie Will is about to lock some motherfuckers up, and you listening to Party Insurrection, baby. Woo! She did it. She did it. She got their asses. She got nearly every fucking body. In case you're unaware, somehow there was breaking news yesterday. Trump got re-indicted and it feels so good. Yeah, that shit happened again. But before we get to that, let's give a word to our sponsor, Sheets and Giggles. If you're not familiar with Sheets and Giggles, that shit is fucking incredibly awesome. Softest sheets on the goddamn planet. You have my word on that. Sheets so soft that if they had been supplied to the Department of Corrections, Jeffrey Epstein would still be alive right now, because instead of choking himself to death on him, he would have just put himself to sleep peacefully. Yeah, Colin's probably like, that's actually not the kind of endorsement I would like for my products. Thank you, sir. But yeah.
I'm still better off without him.
And not to put Jeffrey Epstein in the same breath.
Yeah, probably not a good decision.
Giggles are good enough to hang someone in prison. Jeez, come on.
Oh, God.
They're strong enough to do a prison hanging, but they're soft enough to lull a baby to sleep on a cold night.
So, yeah, exactly. So if you're interested in a set of Sheets and Giggles after that fucking fantastic endorsement, we've got some links in the show notes where you can get a pretty substantial discount on sheets, pillows, mattresses, and whatnot from Sheets and Giggles. I recommend you pick up a t-shirt where Colin
no
tells
babies
you
were harmed in the making of this advertisement. Please do not put babies near convicted inmates.
Jeffrey Epstein was also not harmed in the making of this advertisement. He did that on his own. But yes, feel free to pick up a set of sheets from Sheets and Giggles. They're fantastic. I wouldn't lie to you. I sleep on them myself. They're the best sheets I've ever had. All right, on to Trump and a bunch of other
cease and desist from Colin. What is this? That's next week's episode. Go on.
On to Trump. And a number of other individuals getting indicted for a shit fucking ton of criminal acts.
So we got 3 names here. Oh, sorry. You want to say what it's for? I was going to read some names.
Yeah, in an attempt to overturn the 2020 election, in case you were unfamiliar with that. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast and this isn't your first time, well, obviously you know what the fuck we're talking about, because it's all we talk about.
Yep.
Every week. But yes, so Donald Trump and 18 other individuals were indicted for their attempts to overturn the 2020 election, and we'll get to some of the details on that. But of note,
I think a truck just got stuck under the bridge again.
Holy shit.
I
How
just heard
often does that happen?
This was much more frequent than what the fuck? Sorry, I just heard a big explosion. Keep going. I'm just gonna go see what it was real quick.
This is crazy. Ty, did she send you the? Oh yeah, because she put them in the chat. So those pictures of those trucks going under that underpass,
getting decapitated.
Yeah, I mean these fucking people. Read a fucking sign for God's sake. My God. Or if you see like an overhang, like slow down and make sure you can actually fit under it instead of driving 47 miles per hour under that bitch and losing the top of your truck.
Yeah,
right.
But it's so dark. These roads aren't well lit. I mean, like probably a horror show for like some of them are like long distance drivers. They're like, I was just driving back to Texas. I'm like,
Yes, that sucks. All right.
But it does say like 1,000 times. Sorry. Yes.
That's okay.
This is the nature of our complaint.
Back to the podcast. All right.
So we got Rudy Giuliani.
Yes. Of note. Wait. Let's get some context. Of note. Trump's indicted co-conspirators include. Now continue. Rudy.
Rudolph, William, Louis, Giuliani.
You ain't got to read their whole last
name. Too many names, but I wanted you to know he had that many names.
Yes,
you got
Rudy
John
Giuliani.
Eastman, Mark Meadows, Kenneth Cheese Bro, Jeffery Clark, Jenna Ellis, Ray Smith III,
Unimportant.
Robert Cheeley. I no longer care about these people.
Well, I was just going to say. Wait, okay, let's slow down a little bit. So, of course, Rudy Giuliani, Trump's former lawyer who spent half of the end of 2020 in court saying stupid shit. Also, formerly America's mayor, if you can call him that. Mark Meadows. He's been MIA for quite a while. We didn't see any hint of him being charged in Jack Smith's indictment of Trump and cohorts. So we were wondering what the fuck was going on with that. Was he cooperating or not? Well, we're going to find out soon because he's been indicted in Georgia. John Eastman, of fame for coming up with the fake-electors plan and its institution, along with Kenneth Cheese Bro here, who was also one of Trump's lawyer. Well, a lawyer who was working in cahoots with Trump. Jeffery Clark, famous for getting his house raided and standing outside in the driveway in his underwear.
His night.
That could be anyone.
All right. Well, if that's not significant enough information, he was the individual who was working at the Justice Department, who was attempting to take the position of Attorney General in order to launder fabricated lies about the election being stolen in order to help further this conspiracy. Yeah, that guy.
The environmental attorney.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll call you when there's an oil spill guy. Robert Cheeley, he's a lawyer. Of course, we haven't mentioned a number of these individuals here recently, or at all on this podcast. But of course, we're going to become more familiar with them in the future. There's Mike Roman. I think we talked about him a few weeks ago on the podcast, involved in like facilitating the fake elector plot across multiple states and getting those fake elector ballots to particular members of Congress. David Schaefer, he's the former GOP chair, who was also a Georgia fake elector. Also of note, Harrison Floyd, he's a dude. We haven't talked about him on this podcast either, but he's
black dude.
Yeah, he's one of the few black dudes that be hanging around Trump all the time because Trump got him on the payroll. I don't actually know how much of a Trumper he really is. I'm sure it's just like a grift. Cause like what black people are actually like, oh yeah, Trump's great if they're not making money off of that. Kathy Latham was the Coffee County election official who was involved in, letting Sidney Powell breach the Coffee County election systems. She was also a fake elector. I think that's probably all of the
who isn't on there?
Misty Hampton sounds
Girl works really closely with her, Cleta Mitchell. So I wonder which of the 30 unindicted co-conspirators she is. Because
okay, save that thought. We're going to get to that in just a second. No, like really say that thought. That's important. We're going to get to that. So yeah, along with a number of other individuals, they're all facing multiple criminal counts in this Georgia indictment, which is, well, for starters, largely a RICO indictment. I guess people have been fantasizing for years that Trump would eventually, get hit with the RICO. And we laugh because, federal RICO charges is as fun as they are to speculate about or difficult to prove in court. Well, Georgia has a particularly robust RICO statute where there are more allowable crimes that you can charge in furtherance of RICO. And, Fonnie Willis is prone to exercising, her discretion and filing those charges here.
Here, just to be clear, they're Georgia state laws. Also, in case anyone isn't familiar, it's RICO stands for Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act.
Yeah, congratulations, Carol. Way to lay that out there for us.
I'm just reading the indictment.
No, if you want to put the categories of crimes into a few buckets here. So one, you have the racketeering bucket, which encompasses a number of activities that took place inside Georgia, as well as outside of her jurisdiction. And one of the things about RICO charges in particular is it expands the admissibility of evidence in proving your case in court. So that might be one of the benefits of her filing RICO charges in this particular instance. Another thing is with RICO, so to find an individual guilty on counts of RICO, you have to prove to a jury that a group of individuals were engaged in one, agreeing to commit a number of crimes together, and then acts in furtherance of those crimes. And in particular, you have to have predicate offenses, right? But in Georgia, so the predicate offenses would have to be, it's like a pick two, right? Pick two for 5 to 20, as in 5 to 20 years. So you have to prove of a number of actions the individuals took. 2 actions constitute criminal activity and furtherance of a conspiracy. And if that's proved, then voila, you have your RICO.
You're so studious.
It's funny you say that, because when we started this podcast, I was like, yeah, I'm going to get to crack all the jokes. I have a writer and a lawyer on the podcast, and I get to have all the fun. And then you turned me into the straight guy.
I kept telling you I wasn't qualified, and you were like, "What? You're so cute. What did you say?"
No, I mean, it's totally fine. I don't mind picking up the slack and being like the straight guy, and then you two bouncing the jokes around off of this nonsense. But yeah, so Anyway, in short, a huge chunk of the indictment is focused around the RICO charges and the predicate offenses, which constitute the individual crimes that would add up to a RICO statute violation, as well as some other overt acts that might not necessarily be illegal on their own, of note. One of the things Fonnie Willis mentions in her indictment is some of the tweets Trump made and some of the things he said in his speeches, which of course on their own, First Amendment, you have the right to say certain things. But given that Trump and a number of his co-conspirators were in agreement in advance about a plot to illegally overturn the 2020 election. Sometimes the things you do and say that might be legal otherwise do count as acts in furtherance of a crime, right? So in this particular case, telling everyone that the election was rigged, well, yeah, Trump has the right to do that, whether he won or lost or knows that he won or lost. But what he doesn't have the right to do is to concoct a plot to overturn the 2020 election illegally that relies on telling the public that the election was rigged. Yeah. So,
in aggregate, a statement here, a statement there, they may seem innocuous, but when taken in aggregate and taken amongst the timeline of the things that it fits into that, What are you doing, Carol?
I was censoring my cat.
Yeah.
Oh.
So Carol put her pussy on the table, and her pussy put its ass in the camera.
There was
on the
pussy
Zoom.
and there was ass and there was, and then,
There's
Um,
ass.
and then I censored it a little, and so nobody was ever the wiser.
All we were missing was titties.
I'm
Anyway,
sorry, I'm just not blessed in that area like Ty.
no one's complaining about your boobs, Carol.
They just look bigger because my faja's tight on my waist.
No one can see you wearing a faja tie.
No. Well,
I mean, okay, you know what? I guess this is motivation to put this on the YouTube so everyone can see your faja. Anyway, yeah. So apart from that, another bucket of criminal activity that individuals who were charged in this indictment were engaged in was basically the fake-elector plot, and that includes some public statements and some, court filings with fictitious information, false statements, and whatnot. That's also included in this indictment. There's also a third bucket, which centers around basically witness tampering and intimidation, specifically individuals involved in trying to coerce Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss into making some public admissions about the 2020 election being rigged, even though look, those individuals knew that the 2020 they were looking for fall guys, right? This is in essence Rudy Giuliani singling out that video of them counting votes at the fucking stadium and saying, "Hey, look, those are the two people who had the shit rigged," and then sending the Goon Squad out there to harass them into feeding into the false narrative. So yeah, they got them on that. And the indictment is long. There's a lot of criminal activity. There's a lot of
look how many people were involved. I mean, it was an intricate plot. And Fonny's been working on this for 2.5 years. She was crossing her T's and dotting her I's.
Yeah.
With this. And of course, you've got the January 6th testimony, and not to mention, Brad Raffensperger and Jeff Duncan. I mean, they're salty because of the shit that happened. Like, what Raffensperger was saying that, hold on, that a supporter had.
We can wait till you come back. It's okay.
Well, I know before what I was saying was just how Raffensperger, he was saying how a Trump supporter had broke into his daughter-in-law's house. His son had passed away. And they broke into her house. And they broke into someone else's house.
Who was saying this?
Raffensperger. Like his son.
Oh, in Georgia. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, these fucking people are fucking rabid, man. They're god-awful fucking people. It's just insane.
Yeah. Speaking of which, so again, given that Trump's comments basically inflame his followers to commit acts of violence against potential witnesses, and granted that part of what's involved in this indictment is intimidating voting officials. We don't know what the judge might say about Trump's bail conditions, but I'm assuming that the judge will give him a couple of chances to engage in bad behavior. But much like with Chuckin in DC, I do assume that if he goes off the rails for very long, this is yet another instance where he might be spending some time in pretrial detention.
There's nothing about Trump to make you think that he won't go off the rails. And his rhetoric is dangerous, and it puts people in danger. And the longer that he's allowed to go and say, knowing what his history is, I think that's irresponsible to give him any chances at all.
Well, while I don't disagree with you, what I will say is judges want to be like, look, I gave you all the chances I could, and you forced me to lock your ass up. So you can't point the fingers at me or say that I'm biased in any way, right? So
do it anyway.
I mean, yeah, let them do it anyway. But I'm just saying that the judges are going to try and operate in above and beyond the level of fairness that most individuals would get. and Trump is going to cross the line, and he's likely. I mean, and it sounds like I don't, because I don't want to engage in that thing. Selling hopium. I don't want to be out here selling hopium, but we know Trump be saying crazy shit. He already told a witness not to testify to the grand jury the other day, and it's likely at this point the judges are going to be looking at his behavior, and they're going to tell him, hey, these are the rules. They'll let him break the rules one time. They'll bring him back in and be like, all right, next time it's a wrap. And of course, he's a habitual line stepper, as I talked about on Kimberly Johnson's podcast, Start Me Up. Check that episode out if you hadn't listened to it. D-Night, it's your boy. I killed it, smashed that shit a couple weeks ago, but it's still timely. Go check that shit out. I was dope. Yeah, and when he fucks up after he's had like the final ultimatum given to him, one of these judges, whether it be in Georgia or DC, he's going to be all right. Time to spend some time in pretrial detention. And again, like, I don't want to sell the hopium. I'm just telling you. I've been telling you for 2.5 years his ass was going to get indicted. Did you believe me? You do now. Well, trust me on this thing. It's entirely possible Trump's going to do some crazy shit, end up in jail. Not probably.
But it would be easier in Georgia, right? I was reading that the way the burden works to establish whether or not the defendant can be out on bail. Often the burden is on the prosecution to show why they should not be allowed out on bail. And in Georgia, from what I've read, the burden is on the defendant to show why they will not be a risk breaking bail conditions.
I mean, this fucker is getting on his plane and flying all over the country. He could very easily get on it and take off. Well, not that he's going to leave the country, but he could.
That's one of the that's one of the considerations about him being a flight risk that I'm sure judges are taking into account. Like, he's running for president. It'd be pretty fucking difficult to do that from another country. So that mitigates some of the, and I'm not saying it, look, it's
no, but entirely, if the risk is that he's going to engage in witness intimidation and tampering, then
there's a far higher likelihood of that. Yes, right. He's far more likely to engage in witness tampering than fleeing the fucking country. So that is an issue. But again, like, there's nowhere in America he could go where nobody would know who he fucking is. That's like highest name recognition on the planet at this point, and not for good reasons. But yeah. So again, since you brought up the witness intimidation, Carol, we were talking earlier about you having an issue with the New York Times releasing the names of the jurors who voted. Yeah, the grand jurors who voted to approve those indictments from Fani Willis's office.
Yeah,
but you pointed out many consecutive times that the information is readily available in the indictment, which I agree with that. It's definitely was published in the indictment. The names
but Maddox will read the indictment, but the New York Times article will be republished, retweeted, reposted everywhere, and they'll just screenshot and take it.
I just feel like they could have easily redacted that, and they would have at least lessened the traffic for those people's names. And I'm not going to say the person's name who was funny and is like my name, but with a penis after it. But
well, yeah, okay. Like we said, Trump has a history of harassing people, and given that Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman are specifically quoted in this indictment as victims of harassment by Trump's campaign and Trump's people. It's not totally absurd to think that, hey, these grand jurors should be protected to some degree from exposure to the public. But I feel like, on the one hand, yeah, the media should go out of their way to try and do their best to help support that notion. But on the flip side, it's really the prosecutor's responsibility to raise that in court and suggest that maybe there be a protective order sealing the names of the grand jurors. But what you're going to learn here over the over the course of the next few months here is that, in particular, Georgia is one of the most obscenely open, like, state legal jurisdictions there is. Like, unlike federal courts, they allow cameras in court and whatnot. You can have your phones and electronic devices and all that good stuff. Like, this is one of those instances where everyone's been begging for cameras to be present at Trump's federal trials. Well, unless this case is removed to federal court, what you're going to see when Trump goes to trial for these particular RICO charges and whatnot is a televised trial. So everyone's going to eventually get what they're asking for when this does eventually go to trial. And it's just, I guess, one of the trade-offs in this instance is that Georgia is so open that they don't even bother to redact the grand jurors.
I don't even know how I feel or if I even want to see it televised. I really am just so fucking over Trump in so many ways that I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of people that, they're like, this should be televised, this should be, but I don't know. I feel like
do you think his supporters will watch because he'll be there?
Yeah. So it's not for us. Like, we know a lot of the information in this indictment. We know from the January 6th report and just following this shit religiously.
Like, they weren't going to watch the January 6th hearings, but if Trump is there and they feel like it might be supporting him, they might watch the televised trial. And
he didn't even show up to the courthouse, Carol.
Okay, no, but this is different. So with a televised trial, what inevitably will come from that is the fact that no matter how much the right wing lies about it, there's no way they can dispute the factual evidence of what actually happens at so they can lie about it, but like, you can just say, cut to the tape. It's like,
that is exactly why I think they're not going to watch it. They like their cognitive dissonance. They don't want to, which is why they don't read the indictments.
Okay.
They don't want to know. They don't want to see. I honestly believe that. I don't think that they're going to watch. I don't.
Okay, that's fine, but they can't. But they also won't be able to lie to the people who do want to watch it, right? So It's just like why January 6th is so unpopular among, like, the non-MAGA types, right? Because normal people who might have otherwise voted Republican saw that shit on TV. Like, we all watched it. We can pull up the video anytime. It's like, no matter what the lies are, we saw it with our own fucking eyes, right? And that's why it might, and I'm not necessarily saying that I think it should be televised or not. I'm just saying pros and cons. One of the pros of having actual video evidence is, like, the actual video evidence, right? It really cuts to the heart of things and cuts through the misinformation.
I've lost faith in their ability to discern or, like, really. I don't know. There's.
Yeah, well, you're talking about the hardcore MAGA people, right? Well, there's also people who are just, like, normal people.
Well, yeah, but if those people weren't turned by the January 6th investigation already in the hearings, then they're not normal.
Well, you're talking
about
going
to be turned by this.
Well, you're talking about people who don't necessarily keep up with political news, or who aren't, like, heavily invested in social media as far as following political content goes. Like, just your average viewer, your average person who just out there doing their own shit, living their life. They're going to watch the fucking trial. Trust me. It's going to be the most viewed thing on the fucking planet come the end of this. And those people will have, at least in this one instance in Georgia, access to all the information presented. That, baby, they're going to watch this shit like it's OJ. Like, do you want to know how watched OJ was? We was watching that shit in class, in school, and I was in the 6th grade, and my teacher was like, "Oh, they about to have the verdict. Turn the fucking lesson dismissed for the day. Turn the TV on." It'll be like that. Like, literally, everyone will stop what they're doing, day after day, day in and day out, to watch this fucking trial. And again, this is. I mean, obviously, I don't know what the time frame will be for the prosecution, when this goes to trial. Of course, Fani Willis got on TV and said she would like to have this trial begin in 6 months. And I'm here to tell you that shit ain't about to happen. There's no way. For a number of reasons. For starters, there's 19 criminal... Huh?
I said, yes, name several.
Okay, well, for starters, there's 19 criminal defendants.
We have to wait for some of them to turn on each other and cut deals.
Okay, let's take a broader approach to that. So I think part of the reason, and if you read some of these criminal charges, you'd be like, that seems a little... It doesn't seem... Some of these charges don't seem as like surefire, easy to prove as some others. And I think one of the reasons why that's the case, why Fani Willis was so gung-ho about filing as many criminal indictments as she did, is, again, there's 19 individuals, and along with the RICO statute, you have to prove that an individual involved in the racketeering enterprise committed at least 2 predicate felony acts, or criminal acts rather. So again, you're going to have at minimum 38 criminal counts, right? It just, if you do the math. And I believe, with all of these criminal indictments, what she's planning on doing, or is assuming that will happen, is that a number of individuals will look at that indictment and be like, should I fight this out in court, or should I come in, cooperate, maybe get like lesser time, if not like 0 jail time, and cooperate against other individuals in the conspiracy. And I think by the time she does eventually go to trial, yes, it won't be 19 criminal defendants, or at least from this indictment. I mean, we could see, 7, 8, 9, 10 people decide that they want to plead guilty to lesser charges, come in and cooperate. And by the time she goes to trial, it'll be a more manageable number. So that is one scenario that could speed things along. But otherwise, if no one comes in and cooperates, it's going to take a long ass time to get 19 people to trial at once, because you're going to have 19 different, defense counsels filing motions in court, and the fucking jury selection is going to take a fucking eternity. She's already involved in one current RICO case with, Young Thug, in his crew of the homies. And I think they spent 6 months just in jury selection.
Is that a real thing? Young Thug and the homies?
Well, Young Thug is a rapper. It's a whole thing, Carol. Just hit the Google button on that. We ain't got time. We ain't got time. It's a whole other podcast. We don't have time to do it.
That's fine. Let's move on.
All right. Another thing that could potentially slow things down is just the fact that obviously Trump, Mark Meadows, and Jeffery Clark are going to have their defense counsel file motions to have the case removed to federal court, which won't actually affect anything but the venue where it's held and the judge overseeing it, and some of the federal rules governing the way trials are handled. But they could potentially end up with a slightly more favorable jury, I do believe, although it's entirely possible that if they do somehow manage to get their specific cases removed to federal court, they'll be drawing the grand jury, or they'll be drawing the jury from Atlanta. So, I mean, if that's the case, then they're going to be no better off than they are in Fulton County. Another thing that could just take a while is the fucking massive criminal conspiracy. I mean, that's going to take a lot of time to allow defense counsel to prepare a reasonable and effective defense. And this could set things back for months. I personally believe, with the complex nature of this indictment from Fani Willis's office, of all the 4 indictments that Trump's facing, this one might go last, right? So we got Alvin Bragg in New York with the laundering of the payments through Trump org and campaign finance violations. We've got Southern Florida with the classified documents. We've got Jack Smith in D.C. with the plot to overturn the 2020 election. And we've got the RICO in Georgia. It's entirely possible that with the complex nature of this goes last. And, you know, closely aligned with the classified documents case and just the complex nature of dealing with classified information and security clearances and the rules of evidence and CIPA. That could take quite a while to get all of that sorted out. I know Cannon has whatever Cannon says about that court date, that's probably not likely or feasible either. So of those four, those two will likely take the longest. I think what's likely going to happen is Jack Smith is going to do everything he can to make sure that DC trial goes first. And I believe that's likely by design, right? Because he had an opportunity to charge a number of unnamed or unindicted co-conspirators, and he chose to roll solo dolo with charging Trump.
Yeah.
Whereas Fonnie Willis was like, bitch, I'm getting everybody. I mean, if Fonnie Willis had the intentions of making this go as quickly as possible, I feel like she would have just simply indicted Trump.